The board is convening now to open session after being in closed session, and we always begin with a flag salute, and we have some students from Christensen Middle School to lead us in the flag salute. So if you'd like to come forward.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now you get from the material. And we had one closed session item to report out, and we met in closed session to address agenda item number 2E, and the board voted 5-0 to approve the corrected expenses associated with the agreement between the family of KO and the district. The district agrees to fund the cost of educational expenses for an emotionally disturbed student during the 2013-14 and 2014-15 school years. The expense is amended to include an increase of $1,300 per month. And other than that, we do not have any other closed session items. So the meeting procedures: this is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District, and our primary focus is the education of students of this school district. During this meeting, members of the public will have the opportunity to share information and voice their ideas and concerns regarding matters within the jurisdiction of this public agency. During the board's discussion of each agenda item, there will be a time for you to have the opportunity to speak to that item. If the topic you want to address is not on the agenda, although this is not mandatory, we encourage you to turn in a hand speaker card, and then you will be called to speak during the time for communications from the public. If you wish to address a topic that is on the agenda, we encourage you to fill out and turn in a blue speaker card. Again, that's not mandatory to do so. I will call your names in no particular order to speak to the board for no more than 3 minutes unless otherwise noted. And our meetings are televised on cable channel 28 on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and at Saturdays at 9 a.m. And I think that's the most watched show on TV at 9 a.m., you know, so we're pleased with that. Do we have any changes to the agenda this evening?
Mr. President, we have no changes to the agenda this evening.
Okay, so let's move on to the thing we enjoy most, and that's the recognitions of people who help us in the district.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my pleasure to introduce this next segment of our board meeting, and I'd like to ask Mrs. Padavilla to come up to do the first honors and recognitions for some very hardworking and committed staff members.
Thank you, Mrs. Bowers and school board members, for the opportunity to recognize some of the members of the Christensen staff. Tonight, we'd like to recognize our paraprofessionals, our special education aides of Christensen Middle School. They're a vital structure to our campus at CMS. These ladies and gentlemen provide guidance, purpose, and friendship to the students of CMS. Not only do they work in the classrooms, but they work directly. They are kind, loving, and they carry out a myriad of duties inside and outside the classroom. Several of the aides provide services after school and during lunch to our students. They chaperone dances, they provide tutoring to our EL students, and one of them has created a lunchtime group that started out for one autistic student to have social skills, and it has expanded to any student that would like to participate. Two of the aides are running our Boys and Girls Rise group, which was formerly known as Boys to Men, and they are mentors to a lot of our students. I cannot imagine the Christensen campus without these amazing people who support not only our students but the staff as well. They are the glue that keeps the community of CMS as such a wonderful place. So may I present to you the paraprofessionals of CMS. Come on, lady. I really had to drag a few of them out tonight. And I would like to introduce to you Ruth Richens. If you could walk over. And Lynn Sebastiano. Debbie Meyer. Sandy Guyman. And Xavier Campos.
We also have an annual recognition in partnership with a community partner, which is Sandia, and I'll ask Mrs. Cindy Alba to do the honors of this introduction.
Okay, so this evening we have Vicki Schellenberger from Livermore Valley Education Foundation, who is here to recognize some of our outstanding teachers and is going to come up and tell us a little bit about the Sandia Excellence in Teaching Award and make those awards this evening.
Thank you very much, board president, members of the board, superintendent and staff, and the audience members both here and at home watching. I'm Vicki Schellenberger with the Livermore Valley Education Foundation, and we have a wonderful partnership with Sandia National Laboratories, and each year we get to award Excellence in Teaching Awards. The teachers are nominated by their peers. Usually they don't know they've been nominated. We have a selection committee that is, this year was comprised of a former Livermore Labs employee, a former Sandia employee, and a community member. So we have a nice range of folks who review the nomination forms, and they had a very, very difficult time this year. They said all the nominees were so well qualified and it was hard to choose the top two. The award is a $500 cash prize made to the teacher themselves, and the stipulation when this award was set up was that this is not necessarily to provide funds for things in the classroom. This is really to thank these teachers for their hard work. We all know they already provide tons of supplies and effort and their own resources into the classroom. So this is really for them to do whatever they like to do with, and we want to stress that it is for them. We like to do it a little before the holidays because everyone could use a little extra at that time. And I have with me Stephanie Beasley. She's the Community Relations Officer at Sandia, who will tell us who our two lucky winners are and describe them a little bit for you.
Thanks. So I get the pleasure of actually announcing who won these awards. It's probably my favorite part of my job is to get to give people money. Who doesn't like to do that? So this year, our two award winners are Terry Greenaway from Jackson and Kathy Hellenbach from Livermore High. They were both very deserving of this award. One of the key things that we like to see in this award is that teachers are going above and beyond to inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers. So from a national lab that looks at how we can solve a lot of technical challenges through science and engineering, seeing STEM field career opportunities created at the very youngest age is one of our core outreach activities. So these two deserving individuals have done more than the norm. They have gone above and beyond, and it's really the comments from their peers that make it so special. So we did receive some information about Terry, which just said that he's more than a science teacher. He really is a mentor and a friend, not only to his students, but to parents and faculty as well. He goes above and beyond to help them with science fairs, with setting up telescope activities, and even has gone above and beyond to stay engaged in his science career. And we just found out that he has a connection back at Sandia in our hydrogen program. And then Kathy has done a tremendous job of helping to really lead the chemistry program over at Livermore High, and she's accredited with being a tireless champion for her students and for building the chemistry program that it is today. And she does a lot of extracurricular activities for the students, really making sure that they're ready for their placement tests and to help them understand the value of chemistry way beyond what it is in the classroom. So we appreciate these teachers. We know that to inspire our next generation of scientists and engineers, it really does start with the teacher. So we appreciate that, and we're always delighted to give out this award. So thanks.
So for our third, last but definitely not least recognition, many of us know about this annual event which has become so exciting, which is our Race to the Flagpole. And some of us even participate in it. Some of us actually win the races, others just make it around, and that's an accomplishment, like myself. But I do know that those kinds of events do not happen by happenstance. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes effort from a lot of folks who make sure that it's successful, and even the weather cooperated, which is very impressive. They can control that. And so we would like to do the honors of recognizing the people behind it, as well as I believe we have some of the student winners and athletes here, student athletes. So I'd like to call up Mr. Steve Goodman, and he's going to introduce all of the people, and we'll be recognizing him as well as the others who make this happen.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Bowers. It's indeed my pleasure tonight. Why am I here? Well, I'm currently the co-president of the Livermore Granada Boosters. Brian Tibbetts is also a president. He's not here this evening. Just want to say that the Livermore Granada Boosters was founded in 1958, and this year we will have given out $250,000 in scholarships to Livermore and Granada High School student athletes. We're very excited for that, but I would like to take this time to thank both the school board, the staff, principals, athletic directors, and the coaches for all the support they have given us in providing the annual event that we do, which is a dinner and hosting for acknowledgement of the coaches and the student scholarship winners. That is a lot of work, but we appreciate all the help that we've done. But tonight, not here to talk about that, we have, for the last 4 years, had an event that was a community event, and it also helped to raise funds for those scholarships. And that was the Race to the Flagpole. And the two people that were the driving force behind that from the very beginning were Mike Nagel and Brad Marsoli, and they're here tonight, and I'd like to ask one or both of them to come up here and talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, again, this is our fourth annual Race to the Flagpole. It started out as a 1-mile race, and now it's evolved into half marathon, 5 and 10K, and still the 1-mile fun run. and it does take a lot of help and volunteers, and two of the right-hand people that have really helped put this together, Mr. Brad Marsoli, who's our course director. He's the one who lays out the course, puts together all the timing team, and does just an amazing job of organizing and putting everything together for that race day. So Brad, and then Jan Freitag, another one on our planning team that if you've been downtown and saw posters in merchant stores and at Starbucks and everywhere, Jan takes that on, as well as all the food and everything that's the giveaways, that she just does a tremendous job for us. And we have, of course, Steve is also on the planning committee. Folks that could not be here this evening, I just want to give recognition to Marie Dramalis and Bob Bronson and Rex Beach and Kim Cups, all part of the Race to the Flagpole planning team. But we're actually really honored to be able to recognize a couple students that are here this evening. I'd love to have them come on up, and I'll introduce you if you can join us. And we had a record crowd, 420 runners this year. And several of the races, we have 4 races, and we have tonight 2 runners that won the overall race. Now, not only did they win their age division, which we have a 5th grader and a 6th grader here, but they won the overall race. All the adults, all the high school students, all the middle school students, and very impressive. So I'm going to introduce Crescenda McCulloch from Rancho Las Positas, a 5th grader. She won the female 1-mile run. She was the first female runner of all the runners in that race. So congratulations for winning the 1-mile race. I have a certificate here for you. And Christopher Baker is a 4th grader at Arroyo Seco. He could not be here tonight, but he won the overall race. He was the first place winner in the whole division, and we want to congratulate him. He was from Arroyo Seco. And then in the 5K race, this was actually our most popular race. We had over, again, 420 runners. Over 200 of the runners were in this race. The first female runner that crossed the line was this young lady, a 6th grader from Mendenhall, Jackie Fender. So congratulations. All right. And so, again, it was just a wonderful day, and the weather cooperated, and just a tremendous community support. And then finally, we have a participation award. So we get a lot of runners from the schools, and for the 2nd year in a row, I'd like to present the first place participation award to Livermore High School. Out of the 420 runners, 141 were registered with Livermore High School. So Principal Alberto Salaranza, I would like to present you a check for $250 from the Livermore Granada Boosters. All right. Okay. All right. So again, thank you so much for the tremendous support. You go on our website. There's hundreds of pictures that Bob Bronson and Adam Clark take. Again, they do a lot of support for the school district and the boosters. You can download those pictures free. All the race results are on there, and then save the date. So, November 8th, 2014. So we hope to see everybody out there to come out and support the event. So thank you very much.
Good job. Go over there and shake your hand. I'm going to go put the mic. Good job. Thank you.
Okay, that was really very interesting, and that's really amazing to have students that young actually winning the division races. That's remarkable. Yeah.
What's interesting?
Make us all give up trying.
What's interesting is the two girls will end up racing each other when they go into high school. Cross country.
Maybe they might both go to Granada.
Oh, no.
No.
The Livermore one. Well, I was recruited.
One will run cross country and the other will run track. But anyway, it's really fantastic. Time now for our student board member reports. And today I got this email from Mr. Rogie encouraging us all to wear our top workplace shirts. And the board never listens to what Chuck says, but the student board members obviously got the same memo and came prepared, and they're supporting Chuck in wearing top workplace shirts. So we're looking forward to your reports, and so we'll start with Ms. Schultz, please.
Good evening, Superintendent Bowers, President Dunlop, and fellow board members. We're now in our second week of trimester 2 at Granada, and we're off to a pretty smooth start. So in the world of sports, our varsity boys basketball team won first place in the Washington tournament this past weekend, so we're proud of them for that. And our JV boys basketball also won first in their tournament at Livermore. Varsity wrestling also took 4th out of 30 at the McNair tournament, so our winter sports are off to a really great start. In leadership, this weekend we participated in Shop at the Co-op, and it provided Christmases for children in the Livermore community from families with monetary struggles and as well as for children from troubled homes. It's a really great experience. They get to ride up to Walmart and the Co-op cars with the sirens blaring and everything, and they get paired up with high school students and they go shopping for their families and for themselves for Christmas. And then the student or the child who was closest to the $125 cap, they also got a $50 gift card for a Safeway gift card so their family could have a really good holiday meal. So that was a really nice experience, and we all really enjoyed participating in that. And also on this last Saturday, we participated in decking the halls at the Veterans Hospital here in Livermore. So we were just here there to spread some holiday cheer for the veterans in those facilities, and they were a lot of fun to chit-chat with and hear their points of views, and it was a nice time to spend the weekend, or a nice way to spend our weekend. So we're also encouraging our third period classes and individuals to adopt veterans, families, and individuals through a program called Abode. And for the families and veterans, it's just to provide them with necessities they might need throughout Christmas and to also give them a little extra help for things that they couldn't necessarily afford during the holiday season. And for the Abode individuals, Abode is a service that provides help in homes to people who are struggling with homelessness. So through the Abode program, we're helping provide gifts for those homeless people and to hopefully give them a little bit of holiday cheer throughout this season. So we're adopting 10 families from Granada, 90 veterans, and approximately 70 individuals through the Abode services. So we're really excited to see that pan out, and we're off to a really good start with that. In the world of academics, our staff had a meeting today in which the teacher leaders will be sharing their information about Common Core standard implementation. So we're looking forward to seeing that as a more prevalent concept in our classrooms, and I know the students really enjoy that aspect of their learning experience. Mrs. Kennard, our computer sciences teacher, is participating in an hour of code every day after school this week to introduce students to the language of code and to establish it as an important tool in our vastly technologically driven world. And we're hoping that a lot of students will participate in that because it's really important that we understand that, like, how the concepts of the things on the internet are implemented, and hopefully one day we'll all be fluent in code. So we would like to express our appreciation to Superintendent Bowers for her support of the program, and we encourage anyone to attend any day after school this week. In school-wide activities, our clubs have begun reconvening for their second trimester activities, and we're really excited to see their projects for this trimester. So that's all that's going on at Granada, and have a great evening.
Good. Thank you very much. Ms. Dreyer.
Good evening, President Dunlop and Superintendent Bowers and fellow board trustees. Something for the calendars that I hope that I can see all of you at is there will be Zumba at LHS hosted by our PTSA starting on January 6th through February 24th. It's only an hour from 4 to 5 and only $5. It goes towards benefiting students, and I think it'd pretty fun to see everyone dance the hour away. Our Green Engineering Academy has gone into the second trimester really strong in taking student surveys to find how they can improve our student parking. Their goal is to maybe see if they could implement solar panels that could provide shading for the cars and also save energy and put it towards the school. So it's very exciting to see them already going really strong into work. Students also met last week to get together and learn about how they can take a trip to Washington, D.C. and to New York as part of the Get Set program that happens every year. But this year it'll happen at the end of the school year, so they're seeing a lot more participation. Leadership will be decorating or decking the halls this Friday, and each hallway will be celebrating the holidays. We have the different themes of holiday movies, Elves Workshop, Candyland, and Winter Wonderland. It's to spread the holiday cheer and to get everyone excited for the break, but still go to class wanting to learn. LHS will be having the Aussie program completely this year, and we'll be having about 60 Australian students coming in January. Really excited. It's the most we've ever had on one campus, and we've had a lot of families wanting to participate. Our Operation Needle Drop 2.014 is on its way and in planning. Operation Needle Drop is the lip dub that goes throughout campus, and all the clubs, programs, and activities are represented on campus by the filming. And I heard, and I don't want to give away too many secrets, but it's going to be a lot bigger and better than last year. So I would watch for that coming up on YouTube. LHS is also having Hour of Code, and it is after school, and it allows students to learn how to code, which introduces them to creating their own miniature games and Android-compatible games, which I think is really cool, as it is something that a lot of people will eventually need to learn for jobs in the future, and it's really introducing them into a new industry. Our school will be having their fall play this week, and it's a Midsummer Night's Dream, and it's the 70s version, which is always fun. 70s are good. And the performances are at 8 p.m. on the 12th, 13th, and 14th. Those are the last showings, so I encourage you all to come and watch it. Shooting Stars was interviewed and recorded today at lunch by ABC Channel 7 News, and it was very fun. They got to interview students and ask them a lot of questions, and it was really fantastic to see the ability that a lot of them were able to articulate what it does for them. It made a lot of people really emotional, as we had a lot of people watching the interviews. And it's only part of the segment that they will be doing on Shooting Stars. They'll be coming to the next performances, so they have a big feature on Shooting Stars in the program. Next week, the Red Cross blood drive will be going on Friday, and students will participate by donating blood if eligible. Our winter sports are busier than ever, and every day at home, at LHS, you could find some sport to go out and support. On the last day before winter break, Livermore High will be hosting a ugly holiday sweater day. So we're encouraging students to, dust off those sweaters in the back of your closet that you wouldn't normally wear and show them off. And rumor has it that snow will be coming to LHS that day also. That's all at Livermore High for now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Sounds like both schools are well engaged into the Christmas spirit, right? Fantastic. Okay, now is the time for communications from the public. Oh, no, employee associations. I almost left you out. So we'll start with employee associations. And
thank you, President Dunlop.
Take the floor.
Members of the board, Superintendent Bowers, my name is Shelley Fields, and I'm the president of Livermore Education Association. And this coming week, we're going to have a really wonderful celebration, hopefully. On Tuesday, we will be meeting with our members, over 600 members of our certificated staff, and we will be reviewing the 5 articles that the bargaining teams have reached tentative agreements on. And we will have the bargaining team there to present. Members will be able to ask questions and then vote. And then we will move quickly into our next round of negotiations, and with hopes of it being just as smooth and just as positive as the last 2 that we've had. Tomorrow, I get the honor of participating in the tea at Christensen Middle School. And this, I've been told, is a tradition that has happened for several years. The students provide the staff with a teacup and all the accoutrements, and they are the servers, and they are the musicians, and it is sounding like it's going to be a great way to kick off the holiday spirit. So I was very pleased to be invited by Principal Avila. And last week, I think the highlight of our month, Jenny Younger, our vice president, and I were invited and able to attend a walkthrough of Junction K8 with our Assistant Superintendent Alba and our Director of oh goodness, I'm going to get Amy's title all wrong, but Curriculum and Special Projects. Okay. The instruction and good stuff, Amy Robbins. And we were able to see Greg Elliott, our principal, back at Junction, looking really fit and healthy and happy, and kids just bouncing when they saw him. It was like Tigger had walked into the room. But we were able to walk around and visit over 9 classrooms. And what was really exciting is that when you walked in, you saw classroom walls that reflected purposeful use. No longer was it just decorations for decoration's sake. You could actually tell what they were learning, what the key concepts were, how it was fitting into the Common Core. There were vocabularies and questions and sentence stems and really structured, focused use of the materials that they have adopted over the last year. We saw walls with the big question and themes. And when we looked at the design of the rooms, many of the rooms, instead of having very static and boring desk rows or simple groups, they had areas of the rooms that showed that there was flexibility and strategic design, so that there would be a small group over here, and there'd be independent learners on the computers there, and they would be, as one of the teachers referred to them, the worms, the techs, and the smalls. So the bookworms were the reading independently kids, the techs were the ones that were working on the computers, and the smalls were meeting with their teacher to focus on small group instruction. And it was seamless how they moved from one activity to the other. Kids were engaged in doing pair shares in other rooms. It was rigorous, it was focused, and the students were engaged. And you could definitely see an influence of growth that has come from the very targeted professional development and coaching provided both by the site administrators and Dania Segrist and our partners in education, Pivot Learning, and then the publishers help with the new the Treasures program. It is really exciting and something that I don't know if you've seen, but it was really encouraging for me. The dual immersion classes were full, and they reflected the larger diversity of our Livermore community. And so the classrooms were nice and mixed and balanced, and it looked like it could be any site in any one of our schools, but the focus was on dual immersion. And so that was very exciting to see. So that's it. See you next time.
Good, thank you very much. So now it's time for communication from the public. And communications from public is a time for the public to comment either in writing or verbally on any item that is not on the agenda. The board may listen to the comment, ask staff clarifying questions, but they will neither discuss nor take action at this meeting on topics that are not on the agenda in accordance with the Brown Act. If you would like to address a topic that is not on this evening's agenda, now's the time to do so, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes so that each speaker will have a chance to speak once. And so is there anyone who would like to, I don't have any cards, anyone who would like to speak to any item that's not on the agenda? Okay, if not, we'll move to communications from the public, or the correspondence. So we have any correspondence?
Yes, Mr. President, we have a letter from Sheila Jordan, the superintendent of the Alameda County Office of Education. in accordance with Education 24127. The Alameda County office has reviewed our budget, and it complies with the criteria and standards adopted by the State Board of Education, and it does allow, it seems to allow, we expect it allows, the district to meet its financial obligations for the upcoming fiscal year. Therefore, the county has approved the adopted budget and the outlined concerns below have to do with the local control funding formula, deficit spending that we'd like to stop doing, cash flow concerns, and she again expresses appreciation to Susan Kinder and her district staff for the cooperation that they get.
Good. Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to the information discussion items.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next, I'll ask Mrs. Amy Robbins, our Director of Curriculum and Special Projects, to come up. And what she will be doing is presenting for your review an annual report on the 2012-13 results regarding the state and federal accountability systems and how we fared for the Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District.
Good evening, President Dunlop, board members, and Superintendent Bowers. As our superintendent said, this is a review of data that has been published and that we've all looked at and analyzed for some months. So as we look at last year, we're going to do some looking backwards at the two accountability systems, and then we're also going to talk about what's in front of us with the Common Core and the new accountability system that will ensue with that. So as we're very familiar with, we participated in our state testing, and we received API and AYP results for the 2013-2012 school year. So when we look at these results, our students in 2nd through 3rd grade participated in assessments that contributed to the state accountability system, which is our Academics Performance Index, or API, and the federal accountability system, which is Adequate Yearly Progress, or AYP. The California Department of Education uses these two systems to measure and report academic success of our students in its Accountability Progress Reporting, APR. Students with individual education plans may take CMA or CAPA, as indicated by their IEPs. So when we look at our student demographics, we are a diverse district, and last year we had 12,629 students enrolled. Of those students, 26 were enrolled in our free and reduced lunch program. 13% were English learners, 17% were students with disabilities. When we look at our ethnic breakdown of our students, we had 52.2% of our students who are white, 29.8% who are Hispanic Latino, 5.3% of our students are Asian, 1.9% of our students are African American. We have less than 1% of our students that are Native American or American Indian, less than 1% that are Filipino, and 7% of our students who are other, or students who declined to state. Of those students, starting in 2nd grade, we had 9,168 students who participated in our last year's state testing. When you look at the chart in front of us, the students who are considered numerically significant populations by the state, in that they have 100 students within that subgroup, or that there are 50 students which make up at least 15% of our school population. Those are the two categories in which they can be considered numerically significant. Well, we think all of our students are significant. So when we look at the state's designation, last year, African American students, Asian students, Filipino students, Hispanic Latino, white, 2 or more races, economically disadvantaged, English learners, and students with disabilities were all of our significant subgroups. So we're going to begin by looking at our API scores. We have made steady growth over the past decade by increasing 66 API points. As a district, we continue to outscore the state, whose API is 790, and the county. Overall, our API score is 840, and this year we had minimal decrease. Comparable decreases of API occurred across the county and the state. The district continues to score well over the state's target of 800, and the API target for AYP, which is 770. The district's API score also exceeds the county median, which is shown on the chart, by 19 points. And I know the scale's off a little bit, so it makes it difficult to see. So when we're looking at our students, we're looking at all of our students. So as we look at our ethnic subgroups, the multi-year trend shows an increase in many of our student populations. During the 2013 school year, the API scores for our Asian and African American students increased. Our African American students made the largest gain of 8 points, and has made steady gains over the past 5 years. All ethnic subgroups to continue to exceed the API target for AYP, which is 770, and many of our ethnic subgroups outscore the state's ethnic subgroups. And when we look at the state's ethnic subgroups, we're looking at a composite or compilation score. Our African American students outscored the state's African American students by 26 points. Our Hispanic students outscored the state's Hispanic students by 28 points, and our white students outscored the white students of California by 19 points. When we look at our other subgroups, the English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities have demonstrated a general trend of improvement towards the state target. Yet during the 2012-13 school year, students with disabilities decreased, while the SED students, or socioeconomically disadvantaged students, increased by 5 points. These student populations also outscored similar student populations across California. When we're looking at our economically disadvantaged students, they outscored the state's economically disadvantaged students by 12 points. Our students with disabilities outscored the California students with disabilities by 58 points. As a district, we continue to focus on how to best meet the needs of all learners, specifically our English learners, our socioeconomically disadvantaged, and our students with disabilities. Being in Livermore and having 2 national laboratories in our backyard, we are always looking at our science scores. They do play a role in our API. So when we look at our science scores, while there was minimal decrease this last year, we have had steady increase in our science scores. And as you can see, we continue to outscore the state and the county and students with our science scores, where students in grades 5, 8, and 10 participated in the science testing. So if we're looking at our API scores, there are many positive areas in which we want to highlight. So here's a very few of them. By looking at 3 of our schools, we have 3 schools scoring over 900, that being Mendenhall, Smith, and Sunset. We have over half of our schools scoring 850 as an API score, and all of our schools are meeting or surpassing the API target of 800. There are many ways to look at data. So here are a few slides that Dr. Dunlop compiled, and I will go through them, and if there's anything you would like to add, please do so. So when we look at our students and we look at our API data, quite often it is difficult to tease out similar schools or similar demographics. So here's a chart which shows how we compare to our neighboring school districts. We looked a little bit at our state and our county comparison. So when we look at Pleasanton, San Ramon, and Dublin, while we have different demographics, specifically in the socioeconomically disadvantaged numbers, here's how we fared across the board. And one of the student subgroups which stands out to me as we look across the board with our Caucasian students. We have 52% of our students that are Caucasian. So when we're looking at them, while we look at all students, as we look through the next few slides, I encourage you to focus on how we compare across the board. And then specifically, I think this highlights with our Caucasian students across the districts how we compare. So when we look at students which are at Smith, Sunset, Mendenhall, and Granada, whose demographics may be more closely mirrored to Pleasanton, San Ramon, and Dublin, again, here's a breakdown of how all of our student populations fare as far as our API scores. Again, when we look across our elementary schools, you can see how our student subgroups score across the schools. When we look at our middle schools, here are our student populations and how they compare across all of our middle schools and our K-8 schools. When we look at the 2 comprehensive high schools, here are how our students are faring across the 2 high schools. And remembering the feeder schools for these 2 high schools, as mentioned in the previous slide, Sunset and Smith are feeders for Granada. So when we look at our schools and how they could compare to our other public school in town, which is a charter school, we look across the board, just focusing on one subgroup. Our largest subgroup here is a Caucasian subgroup, looking across the schools, Smith, Sunset, Mendenhall, and the average of those schools and how they compare to our charter school, whose demographic more comparisonally meets or matches these schools looking at how our students are doing and measuring up in comparison. And as you can see, our Caucasians across the board scoring pretty comparably across the schools, as well as our Asian students and our Latino students. When we look at the high school and how our high school compares to the charter high school, again, looking at the high schools here in Livermore, and you look at the demographics across the schools, our students, our Asian students are comparable across the school, with Livermore's being a little lower. Our Caucasian students being comparable and possibly outscoring our neighboring charter school, and our Latino students meeting the bar or exceeding that of the charter school. Dr. Dunlop, was there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I found a few things that were very interesting. In the comparison of our elementary schools, I discovered that basically what was interesting was the really outstanding performers that I saw in there were Jackson Avenue and Maryland Avenue again. If you look at both their score in the Caucasian groups and in the Latino groups, they're doing very well. And it was quite, well, it just stands out. The Caucasian group at Maryland scores almost 900 on their API, and they also do very well, or reasonably well, with all of the Latino students. And so it's the basic composition of this school that always ends up with it being so hard, but they're doing very well with every group being over 800. And of course, Smith and Sunset have been for a long time the, the top, more or less the top schools. But if you notice Jackson Avenue for the second year in a row, if you look at the Caucasian students, highest score basically very similar to Sunset for their Caucasian students, and again do very well with the Latinos. So that was one thing I noticed is especially for Maryland to be up there with some of the top schools is really quite a success for them. The middle schools is more of a mixed thing because we have two complicating problems. One is the African American students they do not do well, and so they're somehow we need to integrate them better. We need to do something to get them more excited about school. But I think that's one worrisome thing. Then with the Latino students, East Avenue and Junction don't do as well. And so once again, I think we're putting a lot of effort in there, and I hope we continue to see them improving steadily. And they both, well, especially Junction improved somewhat this year, and we hope they will continue that process. But I'm just really really pleased with what's happening, but we do need to work with some of the subgroups. I think especially the African American subgroups, somehow get them more enthused about school, integrated into school, so that they feel at home and are actually more engaged in the work, because that's probably one of the weakest subgroups we have right now is that group. But I find it fascinating to look at what's happening in the district, and when we try to sort out the demographic differences, we do the same as the other districts in this area, which is quite well.
And one thing I would like to piggyback as far as our African American students, there's been a lot of targeted professional development with our administrators and at the site level, really making sure that we're reaching out and we're forming relationships with all students. And one thing, as you've looked through the report and through this data, our African American students were one of the subgroups that made some gains last year. And so we're looking forward to continuing to move forward with that professional development and enhance those gains as we move forward. So as we mentioned, there are two systems. So with AYP, our federal accountability measures, there are 4 criteria areas in which we must meet. Our student participation rate of 95% or higher, the percent of students scoring proficient or above in English language arts and math, and that is a steady slope, which has increased this past year to 89%, with the ideal that 100% of students will be proficient or advanced by next year. There's an API growth target and then the graduation rate. So when we look at our AYP, again, we're a high-performing district. Our API score of 840 exceeds the state, and it also factors into our AYP. We met and exceeded the API criteria which is 2012 growth API of 740, or the 12-13 growth target. And our graduation rates we met, and our participation rates we met for English language arts and math. Our AYP, when you compare last year to this year, while that target continues to increase, there were minimal changes in the percentage of students proficient or advanced. As that we just discussed, our African American students did make AYP this last year in both English language arts and math through Safe Harbor. Another testing result which factors into our overall success is how our students score on the CASI, the high school exit exam. So when you're looking specifically at CASI, the first administration of CASI occurs in grade 10. So you can see the percentage of students passing in English language arts for our district, which is 89%, and 90% for math. And again, that's just the first administration of the CASI. We've approximated that when you're looking at all of our graduates, we have a 98% passage rate for our high school exit exam. Another assessment which factors into the mix is our early assessment program. And this is an assessment program which is voluntary for our students, but it helps them show their readiness and that they can be exempt from English placement test or entry-level math exams when it comes to UC or CSU. CSU encourages all of our students to participate in this. And this past year, we had 837 students, all of our 11th grade students participate in English language arts, and then students who were in Algebra 2 or the summative math, which we had 489 students participating in math. So when we look at our first, how we fare with our EAP results, the EAP results, the first administration is in the 11th grade. And after that administration, you are either considered exempt, conditionally exempt, or not exempt. And so this graph shows you the students who, when they took the EAP, were considered exempt. And what is not shown here is the conditionally exempt students. So when we look at this graph, we need to also think about the conditionally exempt students. So you could add 16% in ELA and 51% in math. And when you're conditionally exempt, that means it's contingent on what courses you take your senior year and the grade in which what you receive in that course. So potentially, and most likely, this is much higher as far as a student who leave our schools exempt from having to take entry-level courses for ELA and for math based on their EAP results. Another assessment is our physical fitness test. And after talking about race to the flagpole, many of those students are active in our schools as well. So in looking at our physical fitness test, this is a test that was first authorized in 1976 and reestablished in 1995. It's part of our fitnessgram and administered to students in grades 5, 7, and 9. And it consists of 6 subgroups: aerobic capacity, abdominal strength and endurance, upper body strength and endurance, body composition, trunk extender, strength and flexibility. So when you look at the data across our schools, you can see a range in the percentage of students who passed in 5th grade. And again, to pass, you must pass 5 out of the 6 subtests. And when you look at this data, there are many factors that play. And so this is a continued area of focus in which each school has goals, and it will be targeted professional development from my office looking at how the tests are administered. And something to note, I see a pattern when you look at our Title I schools or students with higher socioeconomically disadvantaged students. There is some pattern here which shows them not faring as well as some of their neighboring sites. When you look at our 7th grade results, some and most are meeting and surpassing the county results. Again, there are still some schools where we need to see some increases to make sure all of our students are meeting those criteria of the subtest. And then here are our 9th grade results. Both high schools are surpassing the county, and our district average also surpasses that of the county. Again, it's a continued area of focus because we want our students to be well-rounded and healthy to make sure that they are able to contribute and thrive. When we look at programs that we offer within the district, we have categorical funding from the federal government. And two of the programs I want to talk about are our Title I program and our Title III program. We'll start with our Title I program. Title I funds are provided to this district to support schools that have 40% or higher socioeconomically disadvantaged, with the idea of adding something extra to meet the educational needs of those students. We have 4 Title I schools that qualify in our district, them being Joe Mitchell, Maryland Avenue Elementary, Junction K8, and Jackson Elementary. You can see that out of all 4 of those schools, they are high-performing schools, and their API scores look different than many other Title I schools. We also participate in the Title III program. These funds help our district and school meet the educational needs of our English learners, and many of those students are migrant students as they attend English proficiency and meet the state's academic standards. So when we look at our English learners, that is a subgroup in which there has been targeted professional development and will continue to be professional development to ensure that we're meeting their needs. There are 3 parts of the annual measurable achievement objectives. One being the percentage of English learners making annual progress in learning English. The next one being the percentage of English learners obtaining English proficiency. And there are 2 different groups. They're broken out into students that have been with us, are classified as EL for 5 years or less, and then those that have been classified as for longer than 5 years. And then the last one being meet the state AYP target in ELA and math, and that being, if you can remember, or be reminded that there's an increasing target of 89% proficient or advanced. As a district, we met AMA 01 and AMA 02, and we continue to focus professional development on making sure that we are moving our English learners as well as the rest of our students to becoming proficient and advanced. So when we look at kind of a combination of the data and summary of the data, there's a lot of areas in which we're celebrating and many in which we are going to continue to focus our efforts and target professional development towards. So looking at the data, we still see a need to enhance instruction in our programs, especially moving forward with the Common Core. We're always learners, lifelong learners, so we really want to enhance our programs, and we want to target our English learners and African Americans while still meeting the needs of all of our students. There are some unique needs present, and we need to ensure that we are addressing those. We want to improve and strengthen our mathematics instruction. We have seen some gains in our mathematic progress, and especially when you observe in classrooms the instruction, so the coaching that we are putting out there. This year we have 2nd and 3rd grade teachers from each site coming to monthly professional development, whereas last year we had 4th and 5th grade teachers. Those 4th and 5th grade teachers still get to see us every couple of months and come back together as a cohort so we don't lose momentum with them. Secondary math folks meet once a month, and we're really looking at continuing the work that Robin Slichter did with them several years back for the middle school, and really forcing and talking about multiple methods to target our students' needs and to expand, and that professional development will continue to evolve as we implement the Common Core standards. We also have foundations and structure that have been in place, and we continue to work on and rely on and to develop. We were looking at our data teams, the use of data teams, instructional rounds, and professional learning communities. We have found that with these in place, it's been easier and helped support us in our implementation of the Common Core standards, but we really want to work with these structures and enhance them and to capitalize on their use. Again, we are transitioning to the Common Core standards, which we know. So there have been monthly professional development for Common Core cohort teams from the sites. So we have district-wide professional development that is occurring, and those leadership teams are comprised of teachers and administrators, and they're receiving the professional development at the district level with the expectation that they go back to their sites and they share and train their colleagues. And we have the implementation of the Smarter Balance Assessment provided by the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, and we will be endeavoring the field test this year. So we'll talk about that in a moment. That will give us a heads up and a practice for what's to come with the operational test, which we will begin taking next year. So where are we headed? We are moving forward to a new state assessment system. Assembly Bill 484 was signed into law on October 2nd, 2013, so a lot of the information just presented will be behind us, and next year's presentation will look a bit different. And this Assembly Bill established a new statewide student assessment system titled the California Measurement of Academic Performance and Progress, CalMAP. So another acronym for us to learn and memorize. The primary purpose of the CalMAP system is to assist teachers, administrators, students, and their parents by promoting high-quality teaching and learning through the use of a variety of assessment approaches and item types. Changing the standard, so we're changing our assessment platform. This allows the district to focus on the transition to the Common Core standards, and the full transition of the new system of CalMAP will take place over a couple years. So the CalMAP program consists of multiple components. We're looking at summative assessments again in English language and arts and math. What will be different is that students will start taking assessments in grades 3. So grades 3 through 8 will assess, and students in grade 11. The science grade level assessments for 5th, 8, and 10 stand as is. Students will participate in the CAPA test, grades 2 through 11, and our 11th graders will have the option and will participate in our EAP assessment. When you look at Smarter Balance System in the consortium, here's a diagram that reflects what will be coming down the pipe. So we just mentioned, or I just mentioned the summative assessments that students will be engaging in starting in 2014-15. Also to come are formative assessment tools and practices and interim assessments. So we are eager to see what the formative assessments and the interim assessments look like. We have a glimpse of the summative assessments because you and all of you can log in online to take the practice test for the Smarter Balance assessments. And the practice test definitely highlights skills that our students may need to adapt and learn to make sure that they are successful. So we will be participating in the field test coming up this spring. The field test is a test of the test questions. It provides the state with a lot of information. There's over 20,000 questions that will be tested. I'm looking at the validity of the questions, and then that information will be taken and utilized to compile the composite test. So we will be taking the test between April 7th and May 16th. Again, our students, very similar to how it will look when the final tests are here, students in grades 3 through 8 will be expected to participate. There will be a scientific sample of students in grades 9 and 10, which will participate, but only the scientific sample. And then students in grade 11, there will be another scientific sample, which are expected to participate. And all other 11th graders will be taking the test as well. So we have the scientific sample in 11th grade, and then all 11th graders will be taking the field test. And then we will be having students participate in the EAP program this year. So all of our 11th graders will still have that as a requirement. So 11th grade has a couple different things happening this coming spring. So when we look at the field test, while the state gains a lot from it, and the Smarter Balanced Consortium gains a lot from it, we too gain from the practice of the field test. Our students are able to have hands-on experiences with the functionality of a computer-based assessment, which is going to be a large shift for our students. Teachers and administrators will gain valuable exposure to the administration logistics during a trial run. We, as mentioned at previous board meetings, we have Chromebooks that are being rolled out, and so students need to get familiar with logging in and navigating a Chromebook so that those skills are present when they participate. So the field test will be a good pilot for us in that area. And as a district, we benefit from having learned where the technology gaps may exist, and we can fully prepare for the operational tech assessments, which will be the following spring. So when I think about moving forward in the Common Core standards, we accept the challenge of moving all students towards proficiency and mastery of the Common Core standards, not just for the sake of improving our test scores, regardless of the assessment and accountability system, but most importantly to make sure all of our students are prepared for their futures. I personally look forward to implementation of the Common Core standards and view it as an opportunity to thoroughly analyze our instructional practices and to further develop and support our educators in order to ensure that our students graduate with the skills needed to contribute and thrive. That concludes my report. I'll take any comments or questions.
Board members have questions? Mrs. White?
I just want to be grateful for the thorough, in-depth report. It had a lot of information, and you presented it in a less than painful way.
Thank you.
Mrs. Runyon?
I think the public's going to really appreciate the information on the new testing regime and how that's going to roll out, because as I go out in the community, that's a question I get a lot. So I appreciate that, and I think maybe this would be a good thing to post on the web so that families can have a look for themselves when those questions come up. If we have a place to reference them, that would be really helpful. And am I correct in assuming then that families are not going to get a report that first year? Did you cover that and I missed it?
If I didn't, I should have. Yes, so as far as our participation in the field test, as a district and as families, there will not be any data that is given to the families or to the district. So instead, we're using it as an opportunity to learn from and make us better prepared for the operational test.
Right. And so the following year, it go back to the normal where over the summer, you're going to get a report on your child on the state rubric. Yeah.
That would be my assumption.
Yeah.
The results will come to families.
We're all waiting for the state to decide how they're going to handle that.
There's a few unknowns, yes.
More accurate. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Mrs. McLaughlin, any comments? Right.
I'm looking at this board of information and how we're going to dispense it out to the people who are involved, but you will find a way. It's my pleasure to be here to see if we can make this system on district better than it has been. There's a lot of hard workers. Thank you.
And just a couple of other comments. In looking through this, I was fascinated with the physical fitness data. In the elementary grades, it goes from less than 20% to almost 80%, huge span. And every year, it actually starts getting better till by the time they're in high school, there's not much different, and it's approximately 75%, you know. So what are we doing right? There seems to be a real approach of getting the students more involved in exercise and in exercise programs in middle school and high school. And I was amazed to see that as I followed and looked at where they were in elementary school with this huge disparity in terms of the training they had to actually a pretty solid report at the high school level. So somehow we're doing something there that's magic. I don't know what it is, but we ought to keep doing it.
One of the trends that we're tracking is the fitness of lower socioeconomic students, because what happens in our elementary schools is, as we dig in deeper into data, some of our schools that have a higher numbers of lower socioeconomic students actually are not faring as well always on the fitness test. And so from some of the surveying we've done, it's because if they don't get it at school, the fitness activities, then they're not getting it in other sports, because those types of activities usually require financial commitment, transportation, a lot of parent involvement, and that's not always something that can happen. And as the students get into middle and high school, we have specialized PE specialists at middle, high school, and a lot of athletics that we provide that students will get, so they don't have to then have a pay-to-play club sport. And so that's one thing that we're really working on with the fitness and the programs now, the walk and roll to school, as well, that many of our schools have. And I think Scott Haggerty's office is helping with our lower socioeconomic students to have that, and also the running clubs. And so we're finding different ways. But at one point, we did have, at one time in my career here, we used to have PE specialists and PE techs at elementary and middle school to support the classroom teachers in keeping the kids very active on a daily basis. And, you know, not to plant too much into your mind, but just thinking forward with LCFF, and as we have more local choice and control, and if and when our budget begins to look brighter, some of those things could be revisited so that we then have in the schools then provide the full fitness gamut rather than rely on parents in the elementary and then kick in middle and high. So just something to think about.
Yeah. But I was very pleased to see that, and thank you for a very thorough report. I think we'll all be able to go away and dig into this further and be pleased to say we've got all the data. Thank you very much. What is next on our agenda?
So our next item is actually kind of a board item, and it has to do with our ability to make nominations for delegate assembly. And Trustee White has served in that capacity for a while for us, but she now has a new role. She is a director for CSBA and representing our region. And so now that leaves another option for nomination open.
And I will comment that it is very nice to have someone on the board of directors, and
Thank you.
And that will be very advantageous to us. And so the question is, do we nominate an additional person from this region to begin the step of getting involved heavily, which is on the delegate assembly? And if there's no one else that has a proposal, I would like to make one. So, and I would like to make a proposal that we consider nominating one of my colleagues on the Tri-Valley ROP board. And that would be Amy Miller, who seems to be very interested in serving on the delegate assembly. And I have to comment that Amy was the president of the board at the time we undertook the reorganization of Tri-Valley ROP. And she did an excellent job in a very difficult job, and I think you followed how difficult that job was. So she's very capable and interested, and so I would propose that we nominate her as an excellent choice to serve on that group. And of course, then the election would have to follow, but I feel strongly that way.
I'd support that nomination. That sounds like an excellent choice.
Do you have comments, Mr. McLaughlin? Oh,
No.
I've proposed, I've nominated Amy, and it's been seconded, so if people would like to make additional comments, otherwise we'll vote. So,
CSBA.
yeah, this is for the CSBA Delegate Assembly. Our board will happen later. So this is for Delegate Assembly. So
This is just a nomination. So there are about 8 seats that are either open or the people have to run again. And so we're just asking that Amy's name be put on the list of candidates. And we will vote again as a board in February, probably.
Yeah, for a selection or
selection of the
board members,
delegates we choose.
No.
No.
This is CSBA.
This is CSBA.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a nomination second. Does everyone agree with the nomination, or all those that agree can say aye?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And you agree with the nomination? Okay, so we have a unanimous vote to put Amy's name in for a nomination.
And Mrs. Gaylord will take care of the details. Thank you.
Good.
There's a story about somebody who assumed that their
okay, now we're on to
assistant would do that, and the paper got on the bottom of the stack, and the nomination was not made.
Yeah. And with that, let's move on to our favorite subject, which is the financial interim report. And if you would take that, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll ask Mrs. Susan Kinder, our Chief Business Official, to present the district's first period interim financial report as of October 31st for your approval.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Bowers. So we just had our adopted budget approved by the county, so now we are going to submit our first interim report, which, as Superintendent Bowers mentioned, it says as of October 31st. And the California Department of Education requires school districts to submit 2 certified interim reports per year. So this is the first as of October 31st, and then a second will be as of January 31st, which we'll present in March. I'm just going to do a little brief update on the budget since our last budget update, which was in October, I believe. And the change to the ending fund balance is a positive $307,621. And the changes that make that, or the adjustments that make that change, are a few things in revenue. Our revenue went up $219,817. One piece was the recalculation of LCFF, because there have been quite a few different calculators that have been going back and forth. Since the state has not came up with an official calculator yet, there has been a lot of collaboration between different groups and the state, and there is now a calculator put out by FCMAT, the Fiscal Crisis Management Association. And so that's been the calculator that everybody's kind of agreed to use. And so our revenue actually went up $98,000 using that calculator, so we like that. And our lottery also went up $46,991 based on current projections. Mandated cost we had projected a little too high because they ended up having a tiered structure where you receive more money for the higher grade levels and lower amounts for the lower grade levels, so we had to reduce it by $114,891. And then there was some interagency revenue that was not budgeted for, and that was for the TV tip program through Pleasanton. On the expenditure side, our expenses were reduced by $87,804, and so that's a positive impact to our ending fund balance. And the changes there were a small change to salaries of $15,788, and then we adjusted our indirect cost. We were able to charge the Common Core Standards grant an indirect cost, and so that gives our ending fund balance a positive $103,592. So together, those two amounts equal the $307,621. So our general fund, if you look at, I'm just going to focus on, even though in your board packet you have all the funds and there's a lot of information in there, we're just going to focus on the general fund because that is really our operating budget. And if you look at the total expenditures of a general fund, 81% of our expenditures are committed to employee costs. And then if you look at just the unrestricted expenditures, which is really the money that we have control over, because the restricted money is based on grants that are for specific uses, 91% is on staffing. So then when we put our budget into the multi-year projection, we made some assumptions. One, as I just mentioned earlier, is that we used the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team, that's what it was, FCMAT calculator. We're assuming that our enrollment will remain flat over the next 3 years at 12,550, which gives us an average daily attendance of 12,095, and that's about a little over 96% attendance rate. And we're also assuming that the parcel tax will be extended after 1415. So the multi-year projection, the changes in the fund balance, you'll notice that in 13-14 it's showing us deficit spending $3.6 million, but I don't want you to panic, because if you look on the top, you'll see that there's a designated balance and a restricted balance. So those are amounts from the prior year that then had to be reallocated into expenditures, so it shows that they're being spent, and so it increases the deficit, even though we're really only deficit spending about $800,000, which we originally had projected. And so the ending fund balance, if you were to look at the adopted budget versus the current projection, is actually a little bit better. And then in 14-15, although we still have a small deficit, we do still have a 3% reserve. And then in 15-16, it looks much better. Now remember, in January, we will be expecting the governor to come out with his projected budget for next year, and from what I've heard, everything looks very optimistic, and so our multi-year projection at second interim may look much different. And we are very optimistic that things will look a little rosier, because all signs are that the state has been getting much more. They're about $6 billion above what they had projected for 12-13 and 13-14. So although we may not get all that money, we do think that there will be some paying down of the wall of debt, which could mean maybe some mandated cost money that the state owes us, which would be nice. And then we hope that some of it will be in ongoing funds as well. So, as I stated before, the second interim will be as of January 31st and be presented in March, and we'll include any of those informational items into our multi-year projection. So the superintendent's recommendation is that you approve a positive certification, which means that based on the current projections, that this district is able to meet its financial obligations for the current fiscal year and the subsequent 2 fiscal years. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from board members? No questions from board members? Mrs. White?
I don't really have a question, but at the delegate assembly last weekend, there was a lot of talk about the $6 billion. And a lot of uncertainty about where it would be spent in one-time uses, which there are plenty. And we still only have to live by Prop 98's allocations. So we can't spend it until we see it.
Well, fortunately, in our multi-year projection, we're not including the $6 billion yet, so it could only bring good things, I would hope.
Well, and there's concerns about, since we don't really talk about base revenue plus COLA or deficited COLA anymore, we're at the whim of the legislature to decide how much for the base grant and how much for the supplementary and the concentrate. Good luck.
Any other questions? Just one comment. They still have not fully paid off the problem of our cash flow. And so they could use part of that money to just pay that off, and then the following money would be designated for schools, we hope, for following years. But it is nice for us to be arguing about how improved the budget will be instead of how bad it's going to be the following year. So I think this is the first time we've had that in so long I can hardly remember, where we weren't facing a decreased budget. Yes, Mrs.
I forgot, I did have one question, I'm sorry. It looked like from the cash flow projections on the background report that we're probably going to have to borrow in May. Are we intending to borrow from the county treasury again, or?
That there was borrowing in there, but that's internal interfund borrowing.
Okay. All right. So we're expecting this year not to have to borrow from the county treasury or trans or?
Correct.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, do we have a motion on this?
I move that we adopt approve the first interim report 1314.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, and the first second goes to Mrs. Runyon. So we have first and a second. All those in favor of this?
Aye.
Aye. And so we have unanimous vote, and thank you, everyone, and let's move on to the next item.
Thank you. So joining us now is Mr. Scott Vernoy, our Director of Student Services, and he will present to you a policy that is up for I believe, a second and hopefully final reading.
Second and final reading. Dr. Dunlop, members of the board, Superintendent Bowers, it's my pleasure tonight to bring to you board policy from Series 3000 for a second and final reading. It was first posted on November 12th and then first read on November 19th. Again posted on November 21st with some changes that were suggested, and I bring to you tonight the policy for final. Board policy 3513.3 is the tobacco-free schools policy. The policy and regulations recognizes the health hazards associated with smoking, and this policy is being revised to adjust to current trends and increased incidence with electronic nicotine delivery systems. Some of the major changes to the policy is the addition of the following: the use of products containing tobacco and or nicotine, including but not limited to smokeless tobacco, snuff, chew, clove, and electronic cigarettes, electronic hookahs, and other vapor emitting devices with or without nicotine content that mimic the use of tobacco products. It is the superintendent's recommendation that we approve the second and final reading of this proposed Series 3000 policy. Do I have any questions or any comments?
Board members have questions? Yes, Mr. Roby.
On what page it is, there's a section here, the superintendent or designee shall not be required to physically eject a non-employee who is smoking or request that the non-employee refrain from smoking under circumstances involving risk of physical harm to the district or the employee. It's in bolded. Is that a news?
It is. That was also an addition.
I kind of was looking at the key phrases here under the risk of physical harm, considering a lot of people consider, well, most people consider smoking harmful. That in and of itself would say I'm never going to eject anybody or approach them because of the risk of physical harm. I find the code somewhat nebulous. Fine, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Other questions on this? Then
I'd be
any
happy.
comments? I forgot last time. Any comments from the public on this?
I'd be happy to make a motion that we approve the policy for second and final reading for Series 3000.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of this?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Voting is unanimous. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll. When does this go into effect? Immediately? Good. All right. Let's move on to the consent items. Does anyone want to hold one back, or?
I make a motion to approve consent items A through F.
Yes, comments.
Comment on, again, I'd like to thank all those who have given gifts to the district. We do appreciate it, and please don't stop.
And I added up the amount that was for this, just, on the list this time, and it was really substantial. So we do appreciate it, and this is, again, a year that we need all of it. So thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we approve the consent calendar. Now we have two resolutions. And do we have any questions or comments on the resolutions? And I'll entertain a motion.
I'd be happy to move that we approve Resolution 21 and 22, 13, 14.
Okay, do we have a second for those? Okay, motion and a second. A roll call vote?
Ms. Schultz? Mrs. Runyon?
Aye.
Mr. Rogie?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin? Mrs. White? Aye. Dr. Dunlop?
Aye. Okay, so let's have a little time for board member reports and requests, and then we'll move on to the next item. So who would like to go first? Anyone? Oh, there's nothing to talk about? No.
Well, as you know, the CSBA conference was last weekend, and some of the things that were particularly of interest were the concerns about selling bonds, and if we're considering starting to think about selling bonds, there's an increased awareness by many people, including Bill Lockyer, our treasurer, that the financial advisors and the bond counsels and the other legals are taking advantage, it seems. So we need to be aware of some of these issues, which I'm not prepared to talk about right now. They adopted a new policy platform, which is really simple and has general principles which will guide the advocacy. There's a special concern about the local control funding formula and the regulations that the state board may adopt in January. In November, the state board took testimony concerning the template that they're going to create and the rules and regulations about spending the money. 188 people spoke. Took 5 hours, and that doesn't usually happen at the state board. Many of these folks were bussed in representing social groups who are concerned that local boards will not take advantage of the supplemental money to support the cause of the targeted populations. And there was much concern that school boards and administrators were not there to say, yes, we are. We are going to address the needs of our supplemental targeted groups. And why do you think we won't? So there's an effort to get folks to go to the January 16th meeting to say that, 188 strong, saying we are looking forward to taking care of this and to support our underrepresented, underachieving students and do what we can to support them in as many possible ways, many ways that we can think of, as long as the money holds out. So that's a really big issue. There was discussion about AB 375, which is CSBA and the other management groups were instrumental in encouraging the governor to veto. And as it stands, the old rules for teacher evaluation and dismissal stand, but there is need for updated rules. And in this new era of CSBA, CSBA is going to take the lead on writing one that we hope will be, that they'll involve the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, so that it will suit our needs as well as other needs and the students' needs. And it's become clear over time that there are in fact two major reasons to dismiss a teacher. Ineffective teachers might be dismissed, but only after support and work to improve their skills. But a teacher who has been shown to hurt children needs to be out of the classroom. Right now, yesterday if possible. And so there appears to be a growing concern that there be two different processes for terminating teachers. There is a subgroup of representatives of the delegate assembly from Alameda Contra Costa who are becoming very, very concerned about the large numbers of charter students in their districts. And I'm not sure they can fix anything, but at least we can find out all the problems. We don't have the same problems they do, but we do have our own set. But the governor has told CSBA that he's not going to support anything that would in any way restrict the district, restrict the charter school. So we may be stuck. Chris Unger from San Luis Coastal Unified School District was elected vice president. And the most remarkable thing was from the Education Legal Alliance. There's a district in the South that decided that they would like to provide a physical class, PE class, in yoga. It would be the stretching and the muscular control that comes with yoga. They renamed the lotus position to crisscross applesauce. There was no spirituality involved, only physicality, and they're still being taken to court. And you can download all the handouts from CSB, from the presentations, and from the general sessions if you'd like to. They'll be on the CSBA website until the end of January. And I would highly recommend Yang Zhao's presentation, which was the second General Assembly, and the State of the State, which was the third. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mrs. Runyon?
Well, in reflecting on Mrs. White's comments there, I'm wondering if we don't want to do a resolution to the state board. I mean, we have a very good example in our community of really effective use of supplemental funding for improving an underperforming school with lots of low-income English language learners, the targeted populations that we're talking about at Maryland, which, as Dr. Dunlop pointed out, has really excellent scores for a school with the demographic that it has. It has really excellent scores for any school.
Any school.
But it has really excellent scores when you look at the demographics of the students involved. And so, a resolution to the state with some factual information, I think, the first step would be either a resolution or a letter, because I think it is important to weigh in and say, we know how to do this. Trust us. We've done it already, and now just give us enough funding to do it in all the sites where we have these populations, and let us go for it. Because we've certainly in this community pulled together and with Project Roadrunner improved Maryland Avenue School. So I think that would be a great idea. My concern about going up to the state board is it seems like they move their dates a lot. So if 16th is firm, maybe we could make some plans.
Hard to know.
Yeah, it's hard to know, and so a letter we're sure will get
Well,
there.
I think if we did develop a policy or a resolution and affirming that we know how and we're willing to, even in spite of not having, well, we did have QEIA money at Maryland, but that our teachers are adept at this.
Yeah, I'd love to see something in our first meeting in January.
Yeah,
that we can,
would that be in time to get the state board by the right time? Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to do
I
that.
would go for that, and you would go for that. Anybody else go for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll find out the exact date so that they can get it ahead of time. I don't know. It might not be in their public agenda, and if we wait till our formal board meeting to pass a resolution, but if we were to write a letter
I'd
and
come
get
back.
approval,
Yeah.
then we could have people to
Right.
write. And sometimes with the letter, then we know that all of the staff has read it and all of the board has read it, and then they can reference it. One of the cautions about resolutions is that sometimes when you put a resolution out, then that opens it up for more scrutiny or, people rebutting and things. And so politically, because it is a very politically charged. So a letter would still serve the purpose, and we wouldn't have to worry about the deadlines. It would get the message.
Yeah, just a letter telling the Maryland story and what we did and how we'd like to be able to do that at all our Title I schools. That I think that'd be an excellent response. If we're through at this,
I'm through.
Oh, yeah. So we did have some discussion about bonds and coming up, and I think we're going to hear more about that. You saw in the last Friday packet discussion about having architects over, so hopefully we'll be talking about that more going forward. So that was really all I had.
Well, like Mrs. White, I was down at the CSBA conference. I was majoring in bonds and Brown Act. The bond classes were quite interesting to watch everybody when something of note came up and everybody shaking their head or not shaking their head because they didn't know. So it was very informative. I did attend a charter school oversight conference and left about halfway through because I realized they're not telling us something we've already done. I mean, it validated that we were on the right road, and that was refreshing. And then the electronic citizenship, which encompassed quite a broad range of things about bullying and using electronics, but it also started to slop over because there seemed to be a great interest in this whole field. Another thing that I did notice in that our electronic citizenship committee is way ahead of that curve, but some of the law firms did produce some worksheets and some articles I did pass on to our student services director, but it seemed like we were there and progressing pretty quickly. So overall, it was a very good conference, and in addition to what Mrs. White said, that some of the classes were videotaped, and so they will be out on the CSBA site at which point I don't know, but they were some interesting.
Well, some are videotaped, but I think all the handouts will be on for everything.
I hope so. As of this morning, we're not out there yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. So.
And I was kind of tied up for the past several weeks doing some things that I needed to take care of, so I missed the assembly. And so I'm glad to hear all of the good reports on it. And with that, I think we'll close the board member reports and requests, although I would like to again comment that the math counts competition is coming up early in January. And so we'll want to make sure that all of you show up and marvel at the smart kids. And so that would be the 11th of January. So put on your thinking caps, and we'll put you up against the kids in the final round for the immediate questions. But anyway, that's coming up soon, and I think it should be again a great event for the young people, and it does get them interested and working in the math field. And with that, it's time to move on to convene our organizational meeting. And we get to do this once a year, and for better or for worse, we get to switch chairs or do whatever we ultimately decide. So the first item there, well, we could do a few year-end remarks, and I'd like to say it's always a pleasure to serve with the board and sometimes actually help the board and do things constructive with the board. So I've enjoyed this year, and it's been, I think, a productive year for us. And most important is to the economic turnaround gives us some idea that things will be easier and better as we go forward. And of course, we have a lot of people to thank for that. And Mrs. Schellenberger is still sitting here, so one more thanks to the Livermore Valley Education Foundation for helping us for a very terrible 5 years. And we hope we won't have to rely totally on the support of the foundation, but we still will appreciate all the money that comes in to help us with various programs that we want to do. So anyway, with that, that's my remarks. Any of you have any different remarks? Yes. Mr. Rogie?
Go ahead.
I have quite a few. This is in no particular order. This is some of the notable things that I came up with that I think the district and the board have enjoyed, and that's earlier in the year, our approval, the renewal of the LVES charter school and the oversight. The many successful fundraisers in our schools and donations by the Livermore Valley Education Fund, American Swim Academy, the Rotary Organization, the Lab, Wells Fargo, to name a few, and other organizations, and of course, parents. Trustee White's election to the CSBA board as a director. Congratulations on that again. Implementation of state funding based on local control, although this did not give us any major additional funds. It broke the potential boom and bust cycle of funding, and we'll have to see how that plays out in the upcoming year. Successful grads moving on to new challenges, continued military academy applicants being accepted, winners of many scholarships to college and other continuing education venues. Recognition of the Healthy Kids Initiative at Maryland Avenue. Delvell endeavor into the cooking arts, which I'm looking forward to. The opportunity to add automatic defibrillators to some of our sites for protection of our health of our students, employees, and school community. All the recognitions of individuals and groups that have shown excellence in our district here in the board meeting. The recognition by our staff and employees that this is a great place to work by voting in the Bay Area News Group contest. This is the second year for this award, and I thank you and hope that we can continue to be such a great place to work. Having 2 Teachers of the Year, Regina Brinker and Lori Gerstig, thank you. The trend towards energy conservation is growing in our district. Our Green Academy has continued success for students. Our Energy Conservation Committee has saved the district thousands of dollars in energy costs and efficiencies, as well as the recycling effort at school sites. Furthering this goal, efficient hand dryers that cut paper waste and clutter, and new fountains, water fountains at some schools that refill plastic bottles with clean, fresh, cold water. The Special Olympics being held on our campuses, and all the volunteers that make it an event worth remembering by participants and parents. That our district has a continuing active agricultural curriculum and FFA organization, and so many more things that I'd like to take and say, but it would take hours for being a very successful district. And I do this in comparison to what I've seen down at the CSBA conference. We are doing phenomenally well. Thank you.
I want to thank Mr. Dunlop for his service in leading us through the maze of what we've been through this year.
Any other comments, Mr. McLaughlin, anything? This is a chance for you even, okay. Okay, so it's time for us to elect a board president for the following year. So the floor is open for what anyone would like to do.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a nomination of Mrs. Runyon. And the reason I do this is because of her background in financial matters and following the bond market. And I think she'll be a good leader for this year, considering our endeavors to have another bond and our parcel tax. And I think that she'll keep us in a good forward motion on these particular issues.
Okay, we have a nomination. Do we have a second? Okay.
What are you nominating? You have two separate elections.
Yeah, we have to do the election of board president first. So we have a nomination for board president, and the question is, do we have a second? Okay, are we in a stalemate? So, okay, I was going to try to just bypass this from my position, but I will go ahead and second the motion. And so we have a nomination and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay, 2 opposed. So this is a split decision, and with 3 for and 2 against. Okay, with that, we need to nominate and elect a board clerk. So do we have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Rogie for clerk.
Is there a second? You're in a second? Okay, we have a nomination and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and nay. So we again have a split vote, 4, and 1 against. Okay, so that finishes our organizational meeting, and we'll adjourn the organizational meeting and reconvene to the regular session with a new president. And if you would like to take middle seat, that would be
I'll stay
fine.
here.
Oh,
I'm
you
good.
do there, okay.
Well, thank you. And if we could hear from the superintendent's report.
Certainly. I was also asked to let people know why Mr. Van Schack was not here. He's doing his oversight duties. There's a special board meeting at the for the charter school, and otherwise he would have been very happily seated here at the table with us. So I just wanted to fill you in on a couple of happenings. Trustee White, Trustee McLaughlin, and I attended an intergovernmental meeting, and we were able to discuss items of mutual interest with the City of Livermore and the LARPD electeds and staff. And that's something that we continue to do. I'll also be meeting with the Chief of Police this week to try to make sure that we are on the same page with any items of mutual interest in the community. And I had a wonderful conversation with our city librarian, Tamara LeBeau, about the potential for partnerships and communication supporting areas of education. I think Trustee White had mentioned at the intergovernmental, which prompted this meeting, the idea of us supporting their community reads programs, but then also so many other things that would benefit us, and we can support the summer reading. They also can help us with some of our specific needs with Common Core literature, stocking possibly more nonfiction text. There's a lot of requests for more Spanish reading materials and things like that. So I think that was the start of a wonderful partnership. I also had the opportunity to attend the 5th grade feeder school Junction Academic Olympics. I handed out the bronze, silver, and gold medals to the deserving students. It was very exciting. Many of us attended the Del Val Turkey Feast and the Culinary Academy, which Trustee Rogie mentioned. They added special touches of macaroni and cheese and apple crisp. And they will be sponsoring a fundraising project of selling holiday cookies to earn money for their chef jackets. These cookies are delicious, and it's a great cause, so it's a win-win. We've also been in discussions about the feasibility, as Trustee Runyon was saying, of pursuing a possible facilities bond. We will be mindful of some of the pitfalls that other districts have encountered, but we are going to be focusing, we're starting off right with the board's established core values, and there is a survey that's gone out to staff to help us assess needs, and then we'll be doing some visioning and surveying of our community. I was very honored to be the sole guest and speaker at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab Securities Board of Governors dinner at Wente, and I had the chance to speak firsthand about STEM or STEAM, as I explained to them, and thank them for the vital role they play in supporting the mutual partnership to support our students. And recall that Director Brett Knapp, he's our interim director of the lab, he's a graduate of our schools. And as an alum, it was really wonderful to see the position that he has risen to, and he credits that to his beginning foundations here in Livermore. I had on the very cold but fun time at the Holiday Sights and Sounds Parade downtown. I was a co-announcer with the city manager, Mark Roberts. We were on TV 30, and even though it was cold, it was very festive, and there were so many of our talented students featured in beautifully decorated and musical floats. And it gave me a reminder that we need to start thinking of our float for the rodeo parade. And with that, I will just sign off for this board meeting. I will thank Dr. Dunlop for his service as president. We have been through a lot, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, as we've seen. And I will thank Trustee White for her service as clerk, because those positions are important, and welcome the new folks into their positions. So happy holidays. I wish everyone joy, peace, and good cheer. See you next year.